Part 32. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Enchenmi-san. Chapter 323. There was no other way, Kaylan could only walk towards the nearest station. However, just when he turned into a deserted alley, an uneasy feeling emerged spontaneously. Kaylan subconsciously took out his mobile phone from his pocket and looked at the words "not in the service area" in the upper right corner of the screen. The corner of his mouth couldn't help but twitch slightly. Damn it, didn't you say that it's never too late for a gentleman to take revenge? This is too impatient. This place is only 2 blocks away from the scene of the cocktail party tragedy. Less than 5 kilometers away, a large number of troops with live ammunition are stationed. As soon as the gunshots are fired here, the soldiers of the garrison can rush there in less than a few minutes. At this point, Kaylan actually chose this place to do it, which was really beyond Ian's expectation. But when he thought about it carefully, there was nothing wrong with this plan. After all, one of the 2 guns he carried with him was placed in the glove box of the hovercar, and the other was given to the hotel's security personnel. The car was still locked. In the underground garage, the security guard responsible for keeping the guests' guns was completely missing. Presumably, they also expected that they didn't have a gun on them at all. Moreover, now is a very delicate time. Even if the outside world will associate the news of his murder with the Morgan family, the time interval between these incidents is too short, and the 2 incident locations close together again. Logically speaking, it is impossible for the Morgan family to attack themselves at this time when they are most susceptible to suspicion, and they still kill people in front of their home. If they really do this, it will undoubtedly change. Became the number 1 suspect in this case. It is obviously impossible for a wealthy noble family with a long history like the Morgan family to do such a stupid thing. But they took advantage of people's reverse thinking. There is a saying that the least likely thing to happen is often the most likely to happen in many detective films. The guy who looks most like the murderer at the beginning is usually innocent, and the person least likely to be the murderer is the real murderer. According to this line of thinking, by doing the opposite, they can evade suspicion. After thinking about this, Kaylan couldn't help but frown. This Morgan family seemed determined to kill themselves to vent their anger. In the blink of an eye, both the beginning and end of the alley were blocked by a group of people wearing hip-hop style costumes. Their heads were covered with Halloween ghost hoods, and they were holding baseball bats, folding knives, and the like. A common weapon for street gangsters. Several of them still had spray paint cans for graffiti hanging on their belts. Kaylan looked up and sure enough, the lenses of the 2 surveillance cameras at both ends of the alley had been spray painted into darkness. Even if Kaylan was killed by these people in this alley, it is estimated that during the investigation, he would be deemed to have been robbed by a gang of gangsters. There were a total of 7 people on the other side, 4 in the front and 3 in the back. The width of the alley was only about 3 meters, and there were tall buildings on both sides that were 100 meters high and could not be climbed. There were no side roads and no doors or windows. Kaylan had nowhere to escape. To be honest, your business capabilities are still lacking, Kaylan said to the leading killer wearing a pumpkin hood. Pumpkinhead was stunned for half a second, obviously a little surprised by Ian's calmness. You guys obviously want to pretend to be street gangsters who accidentally killed someone during a robbery, but the problem is that this is the West 3rd District, which should be regarded as the top place in the entire arc for public security. How can there be such a persistent person in a place like this? As for the gangsters who robbed people with knives, people like you will be caught when they try to cross the regional border. Pumpkinhead did not respond to what Kaylan said. He obviously thought Kaylan was stalling for time, and the employer's request was to solve the goal as soon as possible without any delay. Kill him, and remember to take away all valuable things from the body, Pumpkinhead said in a hoarse voice to the man next to him who was wearing a Sadako hood and holding a folding knife. The latter nodded and then he rushed towards Kaylan quickly. It seems that you understand very well, villains die from talking too much. I must give you praise for this, Kaylan said. His hand had already reached into the pocket inside the suit and pinched something cold. Although he didn't have a gun, he didn't have anything for self-defense. Although this thing was useless against the heavily armored rhinoceros shovel, it was more than enough to deal with several unarmored targets. Just when Kaylan decided to take action, an extremely harsh scratching sound suddenly came from directly above. He and the killer raised their heads at the same time, and saw a figure wrapped in a black cloak clinging to the glass exterior wall of a tall building on one side. With his hands he landed on the wall and slid down at an extremely fast speed. This man seemed to be wearing a pair of metal gloves on his hands, and the harsh sound was caused by the friction between his fingers and the glass. When he was still nearly 20 meters away from the ground, he kicked his feet on the wall, flipped backwards in the air, and in the blink of an eye, he threw a dozen strange-looking flying knives downwards. Kaylan stood still and did not move. In the frozen scene, he could clearly see the trajectory of each flying knife, and none of them were thrown towards him. The next second, the 7 killers had fallen to the ground. The throat, eyes, wrists, these flying knives all accurately hit the parts that could kill with one blow or make the enemy instantly incapacitated. Although Kaylan was using such accuracy can also be achieved when time stops, but it is a bit difficult to lock 7 targets at the same time. The figure landed lightly 5 meters in front of Kaylan. He took off the hood on his head, revealing a face made of silicone and metal. Robot, or cyborg. None of them. The other party shook his head and said in an indistinguishable voice, the 11th member of the immortal crew, Themis. If you think this name is too difficult to pronounce, you can also call me for Justice. Justice, wait a minute, you said you are the 11th seat, and your name is Themis. Isn't that the goddess of law in Greek mythology? And the member of the undead crew I met last time is the 21st seat, is called Hermaphroditus, which corresponds to the world with serial number 21 in the tarot cards. Do you, a member of the immortal crew, have a name that corresponds exactly to 21? 2 major arcana, Kaylan said. You are much smarter than I thought. Genji nodded. Your judgment is accurate, but it is meaningless. The name is just a code name, and the code name can be changed at any time. That's true. Kaylan bowed slightly to Genji. Then, thank you for your help, Mr. Genji. It's MS Justice, the other party corrected. Only then did Kaylan notice that the other person's artificial face still had some female features, but because the exposed metal parts were too abrupt and there was no hair, Kaylan didn't notice her for a while. Gender. But then again, the cybernetic body should be considered asexual. Could it be that this is also a puppet controlled remotely? The Morgan family has gone too far, but you can rest assured that they will be warned immediately. At this point, Genji's face wrinkled in a very human way, even though she did not have eyebrows. Kaylan felt that compared to the previous Hermaphroditus, this Justice seemed to be more approachable. Maybe he could get some information about the undead crew from her. Excuse me. However, just as Kaylan opened his mouth, Genji interrupted him. Don't ask anything. There are some things that you will know when it's time for you to know. If you ask now, you won't get the answer. Even if you get it, you can't understand the answer either. Why? There is no reason. You just need to know that we have no ill intentions towards you. After Genji said, he put on his hood again. Remember, don't tell anyone what happened here. After you leave, someone will came here to take care of these things. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 325. In the West 9 district, an old warehouse with closed doors and windows. The blades of the exhaust fan were covered with oil stains mixed with dust, and they rotated slowly, making a dull sound of puff, puff, puff. A young woman wearing a military green vest and baggy overalls sat on a folding stool, smoking a low-quality cigarette held between her fingertips. She smoked hard, with the bright light of the cigarette butt. The length of the cigarette it shortened at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the gray-white smoke almost enveloped her entire upper body. Don't pump too much, even the artificial lung can't withstand your torture, sigh. A middle-aged man's voice came from the shadows, with a helpless sigh. The smoking woman has short hair that reaches her ears, and a canvas military cap is slanted on her head. Although she did not wear makeup, her well-defined face, beautiful facial features, and the heroic spirit between her eyebrows gave her a very unique androgynous beauty. However, if you look closely, you will find that her skin is actually very bad. This is a unique symbol of people who have been crawling in the wilderness all year round. Under the double erosion of the harsh environment and radiation, no matter how good the skincare products are, it can only be regarded as decoration. The smoking woman's right arm and right leg are old-fashioned mechanical prostheses. This type of mechanical prosthesis has been discontinued long ago. In terms of sensitivity and flexibility, it does not even have 1/10 of the cyborg prosthesis. There was originally an emblem tattooed on her left arm and shoulder. Judging from the outline, it seemed to be the emblem of an army. However, this tattoo has now been erased in an extremely rough way, leaving only strips that look like earthworms. Horrifying scars that crisscross and raise on the skin. Okay, the skeleton has basically been debugged. Let's sit on it and try it. The man's voice sounded again, the headlights in the warehouse turned on, and a powerful metal monster appeared in front of the woman. This is the skeleton of a 6-meter humanoid mecha without any external components. The precise structure inside is completely exposed, and the whole body displays that fascinating mechanical beauty. The woman threw the cigarette butt on the ground, stamped it out, walked to the squatting mecha skeleton without saying a word, bent down and got into the cockpit. The competition is about to start in a month. Remember, be careful when starting. Don't stare at your opponent's cockpit. A middle-aged man wearing a one-piece overalls patted the beam in front of the cockpit. Said to the woman. The woman did not respond, but lowered her head and looked at the controls in the cockpit. Hey, do you hear me? I asked you to be gentle and don't kill anyone again. There was a hint of anger in the middle-aged man's tone, and he couldn't help but raise his voice. The woman still didn't make a sound. This is just a game, this is not a battlefield. They are just your opponents, not enemies. You don't have to kill your opponents. If you are kicked out because of this, the prize money from the game will not matter to us at all. Do you understand? The middle-aged man began to roar. He hit the metal beam hard with the wrench, making a loud bang sound. I have many ways to support myself, but what about you? What about you? Without the bonus, are you counting on that pitiful disability pension to pay for your medicine? He glared fiercely at the woman in the cockpit and continued. If you don't want to live, just tell me and I'll shoot you in the head and save you from suffering for the rest of your life. Do you hear me? Got it. Only then did the woman sitting in the cockpit speak. Her voice was extremely hoarse, sounding like two pieces of rusty iron being rubbed against each other. This kind of voice is definitely not caused by excessive smoking. No one except herself can experience the unforgettable pain. It is a blessing among misfortunes that she can still retain the ability to speak. Hearing the woman speak, the middle-aged man's tone suddenly softened. As long as you know, don't force yourself too much. As long as you can enter the top 4, the bonus of the top 4 will be enough to support a year's medical expenses. Well, if I can receive sponsorship, I can improve my living conditions. The middle-aged man took a few steps back, waved to the mecha and said, try to stand up first and pay attention to the pressure gauge of the buffer valve. Those parts are all second-hand and are quite worn. Suddenly, there was a series of harsh friction sounds at the ankle joints of the skeleton. The middle-aged man immediately waved his hands and shouted, stop! Stop! I found the problem. It is that the fit between parts F085 and G667 is too tight. I have to loosen the bolts a little and add more grease. You can come down first. The young woman nodded and jumped out of the cockpit. To her, the crude old-fashioned mechanical prostheses were as flexible as her natural hands and feet, without affecting her movements at all. Major, the woman walked behind the middle-aged man and whispered. I'm no longer a major, don't use this title anymore. The middle-aged man waved his hand and let out a long breath. At that time, they planned to let you go to the academy to coach. Why did you stay? The young woman asked. I don't want to have anything to do with the army anymore. The middle-aged man said with some dejection, although my hands and feet are still sound, I can no longer go to the battlefield. I am a useless person. Maybe I can go to the battlefield. Being a pilot instructor is a good choice for me, but I can't watch the students I taught myself being sent to hell one by one. Just think that I am escaping from reality. He took off the worn jacket and threw it on the folding stool aside. On his left shoulder, there was also a complete emblem tattoo. It was a black skull with a white noose around his neck. If the hound saw this emblem, he would instantly recognize it. This was once the Strangler armored squadron known as the Reaper among the field troops. It's just that this squadron participated in a war 10 years ago. During a large-scale encirclement and suppression operation, due to a deviation in the commander's instructions, the Strangler squadron that was supposed to be airdropped to the enemy's rear to launch a surprise attack was thrown directly into the hinterland of a dense area of indigenous creatures. They were instantly killed hundreds of times. Surrounded by their own indigenous creatures, the entire army was wiped out in less than 2 hours. In the post-war notification documents, there were no survivors of the Strangler squadron, and the squadron's special designation was revoked and was not rebuilt. As for the commander who made the fatal mistake, he disappeared as if he had evaporated. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 326. I will definitely find that person. The young woman said. She took out a painkiller bottle from the pocket of her overalls, poured a pill out of it, and threw it into her mouth. Then, kill him. Why do you insist on holding on to hatred? The man whom the woman called a major stopped. He may have been dead a long time ago. You tortured yourself for 10 years in order to avenge an undead. Why bother? Maybe he is still alive. Don't you want to give an explanation to the 141 people who died? The woman clenched her fists, and the joints of the mechanical prosthetic limbs clicked. He bent down, picked up a crushed cigarette butt on the ground, pinched it into the palm of his hand, and said, They are dead, but you are still alive. You should live for yourself, not for the dead. You should be well. Living is the best explanation for the dead. He sighed and continued, So, I can't just watch you die. I heard that Harmony Pharmaceutical Company's new drug will be on the market soon. It may allow you to sleep without taking painkillers every night, but I guess the price won't be too cheap. The middle-aged man walked to the mecha. In front of the skeleton, an extra-large hydraulic wrench was inserted into the gap between the skeleton's ankle joints. I can only help you so far. Whether you can earn money for the medicine depends on you, Valentina. After Kaylan returned to his residence, he called Leighton. After hearing the news, Leighton was so excited that he couldn't even speak a complete sentence. Fortunately, the communication terminal used there was a landline. If it were a mobile phone, if so, he would probably have crushed it. However, when Kaylan asked Leighton if he wanted to participate in the competition in person, he calmed down a lot and refused repeatedly. Forget it, I am very self-aware. In a competition of this level, I can only watch it as a spectator. Just watch. Those pilots who can make it to the knockout round, one by one, are all monsters. If you ask me to be a maintenance engineer, I may be able to handle it, but the control technology is different from those professional players. No, I can really only be considered a third-rate person. Isn't it? Kaylan was a little surprised. It's just for fun anyway, and I don't necessarily have to get any ranking. If you just want to play for fun, then of course it's no problem, Leighton said, but, if you can find an ace pilot, then we may become a dark horse in the competition. Ace pilot, Kaylan couldn't help but think of Manstein's youngest son, the 29-year-old Andrew von Manstein. His best result was the individual in the 19th ARC competition. The top 4 in the comprehensive competition should be able to get the title of ace pilot, but because of his father's greed, he died at the hands of a heretic sect, which is really a pity. Hey, I'm just joking. Layton changed the topic. Ace pilots with that kind of ability are either players who have been trained by professional clubs since childhood and have a professional background, retired elite pilots from the armored forces. The former is hard to find, and the transfer period has passed now. As for the latter, the lucky ones who can survive until retirement are basically over the age limit. As for the early, those who have retired, tisk, I'm afraid they may not even have the ability to take care of themselves. Layton continued, the only retired pilots who are of the right age, have enough actual combat experience, and are still in good health are those who were collectively expelled from the military due to disciplinary issues like Laugo's old subordinates. But Laugo's original army was almost all infantry, and the few armored soldiers were all driving tanks, and there were no mecha pilots at all. If you want to find a suitable contestant, it is almost equivalent to finding a needle in a haystack. Layton chattered a lot, which showed that he was eager to participate in this competition, but the real conditions are there. With the current resources of the God Hunting group, they want to appear in the group stage. It can almost be said to be a luxury wish. Mechas are not difficult to buy. As long as you have money, you can buy them at any time. What's more, the organizers of the event have strict restrictions on the specifications of participating mechas. It is impossible to have explosive modified mechas that cost a lot of money. Type. But what's difficult is the person operating the mecha. The same basic model competitive mecha is driven by an ace pilot and a newbie who just got his driver's license. The performance can definitely be described as worldwide difference. Here he can't even walk, still trembling. Parkour has begun on the other side. Actually, for the YIP consortium, the content of the competition is secondary. Layton added, the most important thing is that you can see many new concept machines that have never been seen in this competition. Generally speaking, it is said that these next generation bodies and corresponding enhanced accessories will be put on the market after the competition is over, and this competition can also be regarded as a large-scale launch conference for these new products. These things are what I am most interested in. I understand, you are planning to use your VIP status to grab the first shipment, right? Hee, how can we let go of such a good opportunity? If we wait for the official release, there will be more people rushing to buy. Then we will have to queue up first and then lottery. There are only a few people like us. It's impossible to grab the organization, Layton said. The problem is that this kind of large mecha is not very useful in exploring ruins. The most common 4-meter and 6-meter humanoid mechas can't even pass through the tunnels inside the ruins. If you buy them, there will be what's the use, Kaylan couldn't help but asked. There will always be times when it comes in handy, so be prepared, right? Besides, when the size of the hunting group expands, there must be a few big guys to control the situation, right? Even if you don't use it, just leave it at the door of the headquarters. Being a janitor is awesome, Layton defended quickly, just like the kind of naughty kid who makes up all kinds of reasons to try to convince his parents to buy a toy he has loved for a long time. Oh, by the way, the hunting group's headquarters, Laugo and his friends, how are they looking for a house? Kaylan said to the other end of the phone. The search has been done a long time ago. I'm just waiting for you to finalize the final contract. I was planning to tell you about this just now, Layton replied. In East 4th District, Shengtang Business District, there is a 6-story building occupying the well-decorated office building. Covers an area of 1,200 square meters and comes with an underground warehouse large enough to be transformed into my workshop. Shengtang Business District? Didn't you say that we should look for it in a newly built development zone? In such a prosperous old district, land is very expensive, And the rent of that building should scare people to death, Kaylan asked, a little puzzled. Although it is located in the district from all angles, the old commercial district in the center of the block has more advantages than the newer district in a remote location, but the cost effectiveness alone is enough for Kaylan to pass this option. Although the location is within the business district under the name of Shentang Consortium, this building actually belongs to the assets of Thor Heavy Industries. They took the initiative to find Laugo and wanted to sell this building at a low price on the grounds of business changes. An office building was rented to us. The price they offered was even lower than the rent in the new development area. At first, I thought there was some trap, but after Logo talked with their person in charge for a while, he directly, "I've drawn up the contract and I'm just waiting for you to sign it." Thor Heavy Industries. Kaylan was stunned and immediately realized that Thor Heavy Industries is not a little famous in the field of vehicle manufacturing, and behind them is the Ye family consortium of Ye Yan's family. It seems that the gift that the little fat man gave himself was far more than the VIP viewing card in his pocket. "I understand," Kaylan said to Layton. "I'm going to sign the contract right now. You talk to the others and prepare to move everything to the new headquarters." Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 327. A month passed almost in the blink of an eye. Perhaps because of the Immortal Crew Association, Ian's month was relatively peaceful. No one from the Morgan family came to trouble him again, and the people in the alleys of the West Third District, it was as if the assassination had never happened at all. At least in the public media, Kaylan had not seen any reports related to it, not even a little bit. All matters related to the hunting group also went smoothly. Many departments that originally needed to negotiate basically gave the green light all the way to the end as soon as they heard the name of the hunting group, so that the hunting group was prepared beforehand. The bearer savings cards used to pay bribes are still piled in the safe under his desk, and none of them have been given out. In addition to their original core team, Hound recruited a group of support staff, almost all of whom were selected from his old subordinates and their families. Although they were slightly less experienced, they were at least loyal. There is no problem with the speed. As long as they are given enough time, these people can become the backbone of the entire hunting group. This proposal was originally proposed by Yvonne. It is better to teach a man to fish than to teach him to fish. Although the hounds now have money, it is not a long-term solution to rely on money to support them. Use this method to provide them with a stable job. Anyway, in terms of remuneration, the hunting god hunting group will never wrong them. The basement of this building rented by Thor Heavy Industry to the hunting group is divided into 3 parts: the vehicle warehouse, the equipment warehouse and the mechanical workshop. The first to third floors belong to the office area, reception hall, reception room, conference room, the mission analysis room, archives room and digital computer room are all located in this area, and the 4th floor has been transformed into temporary employee dormitories for employees who live far away from the headquarters. As for the 5th and 6th floors, although the outside looks unchanged, the inside is completely strengthened into a fortress. This is an area that only core members of the hunting group can enter and exit. If someone wants to break in by force, the first thing we have to face are the nearly 30 kinds of traps in the corridor outside, ranging from non-lethal ones to those that can instantly evaporate people on the spot, from fully automated controls to those controlled by ancient but reliable mechanical structures, almost everything. In the words of Layton, the designer, the Institute's defense system is almost at this level. Even if the intruder can break through these mechanisms, at the end of the corridor, there is a barrier that cannot be broken at all, a battleship-level energy shield generator. Although it is only the smallest level, its defense strength is still higher than it is dozens of times stronger than an individual soldier-level shield. Even if the entire building is destroyed, the people protected by this energy shield will not be harmed. This month, Kaylan and the others have been busy from morning to night almost every day, so much so that the plans of the Anderson Consortium have not progressed at all. However, according to the information provided by Zofia, the little girl named Heather Anderson seems to have. I was really obsessed with Kaylan. At least 4 times, I asked the driver to take a long way to pass by the entrance of the hunting group headquarters. It was a pity that Kaylan, who was too busy to touch the ground, never bumped into him. Fortunately, the situation on Qin Zhao's side did not escalate further, since she did not express her willingness to change jobs or her dissatisfaction with Polaris. The managers of the Polaris hunting group still thought that she was still in the dark and were not in a hurry. After breaking his skin, he planned to make this intern who had returned from the sinkhole by chance a full-time job. Of course, if you think about it with your toes, you would know that the contract for full-time job promotion must also be full of various profit traps. However, at least nothing will happen in the near future. Even if the contract is to be replaced by a regular employee, Qin Zhao will have to receive 3 months of advanced training first, so the issue of liquidated damages is not that urgent. 1 week before the start of the mecha competition, Yan sent people to Kaylan and others to deliver engineering prototypes of several new models that had not yet been officially released. According to people sent by Yan, these new models were also included in the list. The list of available models for this competition has been compiled. With slight modifications and debugging, it can be used directly on the field without any need to prepare additional aircraft. Yan seems to have made up his mind that they want to participate. However, relying solely on the advantages of the new aircraft and without the pilots to adapt to it, if they want to qualify in the group stage, they still have to. It's as difficult as climbing to heaven. But Layton didn't care about this. After the new machine was delivered, he spent the whole day in the mechanical workshop on the basement floor. Even during mealtime, he was nowhere to be seen. Meanwhile, on the other side. How could this happen? The middle-aged man looked at the tablet in his hand, his face full of anger and confusion. Why is this happening? Why? Why? He raised the tablet as if he wanted to slam it to the ground, but in the end, he slowly put his hand down. There was not much balance left in his account, and in order to modify the mecha, he applied for a loan from all the institutions that could lend money. Although this second-hand tablet was very cheap, he had no money to buy it. He had no way out, he could only bite the bullet and move forward. He believed in Valentina. He believed that with her ability, even if the road ahead was full of thorns, she would be able to overcome them. But now, there are no thorns ahead. Not even a road. He raised his head and looked at the huge mecha standing quietly in the warehouse, and a feeling of despair gradually filled his heart. "Major, what happened?" Valentina stood behind him until he stopped yelling hysterically, then she asked. "The Striker 3 skeleton has been completely eliminated." The man handed the tablet behind him without looking back. According to the list of available skeletons announced by the event organizer, we must at least replace the skeleton with a strong one. Only the Raider Type 4 can qualify for this competition, but let alone changing the skeleton, we don't even have enough money to replace the outer armor. We can't use it to compete. Valentina took the tablet and glanced at the rusty mecha. Just yesterday, the middle-aged man she called the Major had just put the tablet on the armor was assembled. Although they could only afford second-hand armor, and although they were not even willing to spend money on rust removal and painting, Valentina knew in her heart that even such a mecha would be in her hands. Here, you can easily defeat those glamorous opponents. But if she can't play, even if she has the strength to be a champion, it's meaningless. Although the competition format of the competition was announced 3 months ago, the list of available skeleton models was only made public just now. According to the organizer of the competition, the Yip Foundation, this was done to ensure the mystery of the new model, but it also made the competition more mysterious. What the Major and Valentina didn't expect was that in addition to adding new machine frames with names they had never heard of at the end of the list, the Ye Consortium also eliminated 6 old-fashioned frames at the top of the list, including the Raider 3 frame they used. There are a total of 4 models of 6-meter humanoid skeletons in the Striker series. Except for the Type 4, which is an enhanced skeleton launched by Hermes Industries 8 years ago based on the Striker 3, the other 3 models are it is an antique with a history of at least 30 years. The number of contestants using this series of skeletons is almost negligible. Even if there are, they are basically spare bodies registered by some relatively poor clubs. Even if the organizer removes these antique skeletons from the list if eliminated, the impact on the contestants can be said to be minimal. But for the Major and Valentina, this Raider 3 skeleton is already the best skeleton they can buy because they are frugal and borrowing money. But now the Raider 3 but he was suddenly suspended. No wonder the Major became like this. Valentina browsed the information on the tablet screen expressionlessly. Although the event organizer will sell the whiteboard skeleton and corresponding accessories to all contestants at cost price, the price of the Striker for it still as high as more than 6 million credit points. Even if they sell the debugged mecha on hand, they simply can't afford such a price. As for the existing Raider 3 skeleton, which has an unknown number of hands, it cost less than 500,000 credits when I bought it back. The biggest difference between the Raider Type 3 and Type 4 is that Type 4 has a fully enclosed cockpit mixed with a large amount of nano alloy, while the Type 3 cockpit is just a frame supported by several steel frames. The protection of the pilot relies entirely on the thin outer armor plate. The reason why the organizers eliminated the Raider 3 frame is irrefutable: the Raider 3 cockpit's protection measures for pilots are not perfect enough. In previous competitions, pilots using this type of frame have the highest injury rate. Still high, now that there is a safer frame, it is natural to eliminate these old models with obvious flaws. But Valentina doesn't care. Even if she doesn't have outer armor, even if she only competes with a skeleton, she is confident that she can kill everyone who stands in her way. However, she doesn't care, and it doesn't mean that the organizer of the event can make an exception for her alone. The world is so unfair. The commander who gave the wrong order and led to the death of 141 people in the Strangler Squadron was able to escape the military court just because he had a prominent family background, and she, even with her own life on the line, was rejected from the mecha competition just because the skeleton she used was not safe enough. That's right, after all, her life is not valuable. Just like the 141 people in the Strangler Squadron, their lives are not valuable. The force on Valentina's fingers suddenly increased, and several tiny cracks suddenly appeared on the yellowing and aging plastic frame of the tablet. But at this moment, a dialog box suddenly popped up at the top of the screen. An unknown user sent you a private message. Do you want to open it now? Major, someone sent you an email. Valentina raised her head and looked at the middle-aged man who suddenly knelt on the ground and said, "Probably a debt collector." Before the middle-aged man finished speaking, Valentina had already clicked on the private message. The sender is a user with the ID X0420, and the first sentence at the beginning of the private message is, 15 minutes ago, the YA Group just announced the list of available skeleton models for this mecha competition. As far as I know, Your Excellency, the registration materials submitted by the participating teams only included one airframe, using a Striker 3 frame that was not on the list. Who is this person? How did he know? Valentina was stunned and immediately moved her gaze to the next line. According to the rules of the event organizer, if you fail to update your body information and submit it for inspection within 72 hours before the start of the competition, you will be disqualified. However, judging from your economic situation, you may no longer have the ability to replace the body. The owner of this account, Chi Hanfan, has remaining assets of 161 credit points. In addition, there are 26 debts totaling 486,050 credit points. The latest debt repayment date is September. Queen of Heaven, 31,100 credits with interest. Who are you? Why do you know these things? Valentina became more and more frightened as she read. Even she didn't know much about these data. She only knew that the Major secretly borrowed a lot of money to modify the mecha. but she was never told the specific amount. Me? I'm just an intelligence broker. But this time I'm doing a favor for an old client and working part-time as a headhunter and a talent agency. Of course, these are not important. What's important is that if you are disqualified from the competition, those arrears, you haven't paid at all, have you? This X 0420 was online, and as soon as Valentina sent the message, he immediately responded. To make a long story short, I have an old customer who also wants to participate in this competition, but his situation is exactly the opposite of yours. He has several of the latest models of competitive mechas, but he can't find a strong pilot. Manipulate them. He originally asked me for help with the idea of trying it out, and I don't know whether it was my luck or his luck that allowed me to find you. You decide for yourself whether you want to join or not. Major, this person is not here to collect debts. Valentina took the tablet and walked up to Chi Hanfan. Not debt collection. He said there was a team and invited me to join, said they had the latest competitive mecha. Valentina said hesitantly. She was not sure whether what this person said was true or not. A complete liar. But I'm not sure whether what he said is true or not. What? Chi Hanfan grabbed the tablet and quickly read the content in the chat box. His breathing was slightly rapid. He raised his head, stared at Valentina and said, This may be our only chance. Whether it is true or false, we should give it a try. He immediately typed and asked, what is the name of the club that invited us to join? How are the pilots treated? If we get ranked, how much bonus will we get? Also, if there is a draft contract, can you send it to me first so I can take a look? The invitation to you is not a professional club, but an amateur team. Amateur team? Who is the boss behind it? Chi Hanfan asked. Since they can get the latest competitive mecha, the financial resources of this amateur team cannot be underestimated. Maybe there is a big consortium behind it? The son of a big family. God Hunting Group. God Hunting Group. Chi Hanfan was stunned for a moment, then opened the search engine in another window and entered these 4 words. The search results popped up quickly. As ARC's officially registered consortium-level hunting group, at least the information on the surface is something that everyone can search on the internet. But when Chi Hanfan saw one of the photos of the founder of the hunting group, he couldn't help but exclaimed. This person, is he that Gynek? P.S. Thanks to Wang Xiaoquan for the 10,000 starting coins, and I also wish you can become an excellent people's policeman in the future. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 328. After online negotiations, the meeting place between the two parties was finally selected in the reception room of the God of Hunting Group headquarters. Kaylan really didn't expect that. He just mentioned it to the information dealer on the forum, and didn't have much hope for it. In the end, the guy actually found a qualified pilot, and it made him even more disappointed. What Kaylan didn't expect was that the other party and the Hound were still old acquaintances. Strangler Squadron, I remember your name was Chi Hanfan, right? We all thought the entire squadron had been wiped out, but we didn't expect you were still alive. Hound said with some emotion. Both of them were once field troops. The officers' service time basically overlapped, and the troops under their command had cooperated in combat operations more than once. Even after so many years, the Hound still recognized each other's name when he saw him at the first sight. Come out. Chi Hanfan of the Strangler Squadron is dead. Now I am just a down-and-out mechanic. Chi Hanfan sat on the sofa opposite, shaking his head with a self-deprecating smile. I don't even understand now. What happened in that operation? Did the people above have their brains go crazy? They just asked the fleet to throw you into the monster pile, even if it is to lure the enemy into a battle. This is not how it is done. Huh, Hound said with some confusion. His troops did not participate in that battle, so all knowledge of the operation was limited to the content of the post-war announcement. The order we received was originally to airdrop to the rear of the enemy formation and use the high maneuverability of the mecha to clear out the single targets on the rear flanks. However, the commander responsible for coordinating the airborne troops marked the wrong location when setting up the airdrop. Coordinates: we were aboard an unmanned autonomous transport ship at that time, and there was severe communication interference in the area of the battlefield. When we realized that the situation was wrong and wanted to report to the headquarters to modify the preset instructions, it was already too late. We didn't even have a chance to abandon our armor and escape before we were dropped by the transport ship. Damn, such an idiot and a waste. How on earth did he sneak into the frontline headquarters? After hearing this, Hound immediately clenched his fists and couldn't help cursing. This kind of thing is undoubtedly what every professional soldier hates the most. They are not afraid of sacrifice, but if the sacrifice they make is worthless because of an incompetent superior, they will not be able to rest in peace even until they die. Chi Hanfan glanced at Valentina next to him and continued, "We have no choice but to huddle together and find a direction to try to break out." The offensive of those indigenous creatures was very fierce, and there was also acid that could corrode armor. We only moved less than 200 meters, and we suffered 20% casualties. At that time, Valentina was just 16 years old and had only joined the army for 3 months. Generally speaking, the army on Ark will only recruit adults who are over 18 years old, but if there are some people with special skills, for talents, this standard can be relaxed to at least 16 years old. As for Valentina being assigned to the Strangler Squadron at the age of 16, it only shows that she is an expert in driving mechas. A genius girl with extraordinary talents. My subordinates, those brats, have been protecting me and Valentina in the middle. I wanted to rush to the front, but the 2 bastards next to me grabbed me hard and prevented me from breaking away. Wait until when the robotic arm was released, Valentina and I were the only ones left alive in the entire squadron. We fought our way out of the siege, but everyone else died. Even Valentina's cockpit was hit by an acid jet. Nearly 1/3 of her body was directly dissolved. Although she picked up his life came back, but he left behind a lot of sequelae. "So, you are participating in the competition for medical expenses?" Kaylan asked. "Well, in order to keep the commander, the people above gave us a large amount of hush money, but Valentina was in a coma for a full year, during which she underwent dozens of surgeries. Because the unit number was also we were deregistered and annihilated and lost our military membership. The surgery was not reimbursed at all. The money was quickly running out. As for the monthly disability pension, it was just a drop in the bucket." Chi Hanfan said this and sighed deeply, but Valentina's life was bought by those brats at the cost of their own lives. "I can't watch her die of illness. This is the only thing we have. Opportunity." "Okay, I understand." Hound walked over and pressed Chi Hanfeng's shoulder hard. "I will first transfer 10 million credits to you in a private name, and you take Valentina with you." Before Hound finished speaking, he was interrupted by Chi Hanfan. He looked directly into Hound's eyes and said seriously, "Nick, we are not beggars, all we need is a chance to compete." "Well, let me lend you these 10 million. Since Valentina has become the pilot in our team, it is naturally one of our responsibilities to regulate the pilot's physical condition. In addition, I will transfer 10 million will be credited to your account. This 10 million is used to fund the maintenance of the mecha. As for the skeleton of the new mecha, it is now parked in the basement of this building. You can start work at any time. As for your treatment and the issue of bonus distribution." Having said this, the Hound turned his head and looked at Kaylan with a questioning look. "As a pilot, Miss Valentina's daily salary is 8,000 credits. As for Mr. Chi, you should be considered a mechanic, so your daily salary is set at 6,500 credits. This should not be a problem." I think those professional clubs basically they are all at the salary level. Kaylan was naturally referring to the salaries offered by top clubs to their top pilots and mechanics. If he hadn't considered that the other party might not be willing to accept them, he would have planned to offer them even higher. Other benefits and permissions are the same as those of full-time employees of our hunting group. In addition, there is the issue of event bonuses. Kaylan thought for a moment and then said, if they can qualify from the group stage, Miss Valentina and Mr. Chi will each receive an additional reward of 2 million credit points. In the knockout stage, the ranking bonus awarded by the organizer will be "It all belongs to you." If we can enter the semi-finals, or if we are lucky enough to win the championship, we will split the final prize money 50-50. According to the organizer's original bonus system, there is no bonus for qualifying in the group stage, and in the knockout stage, every player eliminated will receive a gradually accumulating ranking bonus. If they reach the semi-finals, in addition to the placement bonus, there will also be a generous final bonus. As for the champion of the competition, not only will he receive a huge final bonus and placement bonus, but he will also receive a customized car made by the family group. Top-of-the-line new matches and free maintenance and hardware update services for 5 consecutive years. Of course, this is also one of the business methods of the group, using the reputation of the champion to advertise loud enough for its new matches. The conditions given by Kaylan can be said to be extremely generous. If Valentina cannot reach the semi-finals, Kaylan and the others will not only be unable to obtain any benefits, but will also have to pay out a large sum of money. If it were any other company, it is impossible for a professional club to sign such a contract that is extremely easy to lose money. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 329. The 40th year of the new era, Alpha Star, FS009 War Zone. An iron-gray transport ship parted the heavy lead gray clouds and fell towards the sand dunes directly below. 800 meters, 600 meters, 400 meters, the reading on the altimeter is getting smaller and smaller. More than 100 Walker bipedal tactical mechas in the airdrop cabin are also ready to parachute. But at this moment, a sharp-eyed pilot suddenly said, "This sand dune doesn't seem right. Why do I feel like something is moving down there?" "Is it caused by the wind?" another pilot said. No. Something is really moving." At this time, the transport ship was only 200 meters away from the ground. Through the open hatch and the monitor on the mecha, everyone could clearly see, this sand dune is constantly rolling like waves. In the gaps between the gravel, you can vaguely see dark brown carapace and jointed limbs. Levi, Chi Hanfan immediately realized the problem and shouted to his adjutant, "Check the airdrop coordinates immediately." "Yes." The adjutant responded loudly, but 2 seconds later, in his voice with a hint of trembling, he said, report, Major, there is a deviation in the preset coordinates. Our current location is 719,451, and the originally planned airdrop point should be 619,451. The difference of one number caused their position to deviate a full 100 units to the north. In other words, the sand dunes below were exactly in the hinterland of the habitat of the group of insects. Under these surging gravels, in fact, there are tens of millions of nests. Contact the command center immediately. Ask them to modify the preset airdrop coordinates. No. The interference here is too strong and we can't get in touch with the headquarters. Everyone, abandon your armor immediately. We are finished. It's too late. Chi Hanfan's heart thumped as he watched the indicator light in the airdrop cabin change from red to green. All Walker mechas are fixed on the airdrop brackets by mechanical arms, and the cockpit door directly above is right in front of a metal beam equipped with slide rails. In this case, The pilot has no way to get out of the cockpit. The fully automatic airdrop program has been activated, and the chains and pulleys begin to rotate slowly. Each walker mecha is like a poultry that has been cleaned and hung on a hook on a factory assembly line, and is carried to the cabin by a robotic arm. Outside, plunge into the battlefield below. No. This is not a battlefield at all, but a slaughterhouse. Valentina nervously grasped the joystick of the mecha. This was her first time on the battlefield. Although she had killed tens of thousands of indigenous creatures on the simulator, at this time, her limbs still couldn't bear it. Liv trembling slightly. There's nothing we can do, Chi Hanfen sighed. His mecha was lined up in front of Valentina. Valentina, remember, when you get down, go directly to join the group. Keep moving, keep firing, don't stay in a daze and pay attention to the remaining ammunition and crystals at all times. This battle may be difficult, and we may all die here, but as long as you are not dead, never give up. Valentina controlled her walker to trek through the gravel step by step. People were dying every second. Looking at the team's communication channel, she could only see a large area of offline graids. But Valentina couldn't see the battle outside at all. More than a dozen walker mechas tightly guarded her and Major Chi Hanfen's bodies in the middle, using her own body to act as a shield for the two. Chi Hanfen kept shouting for his subordinates not to stand in front of him, but the soldiers had a better reason. Only the Major's command body is equipped with high-power communication equipment. If the Major's body is destroyed, then even if others break out of the encirclement, they will not be able to send a signal for help to the headquarters. There are fewer and fewer comrades left. The golden sand dunes are filled with the remains of mechas and the corpses of various insects. Valentina's mind is already blank. She controls the mecha and probes the muzzle of the gun. Go out and shoot around randomly. Her concept of time and space has been completely blurred, and her hands have long lost feeling, and she is operating the walker mecha only with muscle memory. A series of tiny blisters appeared on her lips, and large dark stains of sweat oozed from the front and back of her combat uniform. There were very few people alive in the entire Strangler squadron. Even the human wall surrounding her and Chi Hanfen began to have gaps, but the bugs continued to come up, seemingly endless. She didn't know how many hours had passed, but the only mechas still standing were her and the Major. A bug that looked like a giant cockroach suddenly jumped out of the sand and pounced on Valentina's walker. She subconsciously raised the gun and wanted to pull the trigger, but there was a dry click sound in the barrel of the gun. But it made her despair. Her last box of ammunition belts had been emptied, and she could only watch helplessly as the big cockroach threw herself to the ground. With a crack sound, a sharp blade instantly penetrated the body of the big cockroach. Chi Hanfen raised the tip of the blade and lifted the insect pressed on Valentina's mecha. But at this moment, the dying insect moved towards Valentina, spat out a mouthful of acid in the cockpit. No, Chi Hanfen's roar echoed in the communication channel. Valentina watched in horror as the acid eroded through the armor on the outside of the cockpit and dripped onto her body. Pain. Unbearable pain, like a burning iron. Valentina suddenly opened her eyes. There were no sand dunes, no mechas, and no bugs. What she could see was an unfamiliar ceiling with a rectangular ceiling lamp attached. But the excruciating pain didn't go away. Valentina struggled and rolled off the bed, touched the medicine bottle on the bedside table, poured out a few painkillers from it, and swallowed it directly with her saliva. The pain gradually eased, and her breathing became calmer little by little. She picked up the jacket that had fallen on the floor, put it on her body, and then staggered to the door of the room. This is the headquarters of the God Hunting Group, a temporary staff dormitory located on the 4th floor. The air conditioning is on in the room, and the temperature is the most comfortable 26.5 degrees Celsius after being adjusted by the intelligent program. Compared with the old warehouse that is stuffy and filled with the smell of engine oil all year round, this new place is heaven. Valentina glanced at the clock. It was now 2:30 in the morning. She opened the door and walked out. The corridor was very quiet. There were not many hunting group employees living here, and they were all asleep. She walked quietly to the elevator, hesitated for a while, and then turned to the stairs on one side. The third and second floors were also dark, with only a few dim warm lights still on in the reception hall on the first floor. She tightened her jacket tightly and walked toward the basement. The lights in the workshop were on, and the major and another reformer named Layton seemed to be arguing fiercely about something, but Valentina's attention was immediately attracted by the mechas standing behind them. In the past, this was a 6-meter humanoid mecha. The streamlined outer armor surface was painted in black, white and orange. It was kneeling on the repair stand, with its head lowered and its arms hanging naturally close to its sides. A decorative long white ponytail is added to the back of the head, and the white hair is scattered on the shoulder armor. From a distance, it looks like a Valkyrie wearing heavy armor. At this time, Chi Hanfan and Layton, who were arguing, had also discovered Valentina at the stairs. The former's expression suddenly changed, and he walked up quickly and asked in a low voice, "Are you awakened by pain again?" "It's okay, I've already taken the medicine." Valentina nodded, her eyes still staying on the mecha, and asked, "What's its name?" "Major Chi and I were arguing about this matter just now," Layton said from the side. "I wanted to name this mecha Ersamuov, but he insisted on saying that the name was old-fashioned and unpleasant." "Don't call me Major Chi, I'm no longer a soldier," Chi Hanfan emphasized again. "Although your modification skills are pretty good, the name you chose is really not in good taste." "Then you say I have no taste, but you want to come up with something." "I haven't decided yet, but I can't call him Ersamov anyway." The two were about to quarrel again, but Valentina suddenly said a name, "Valkyrie, just call it Valkyrie." Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-San. Chapter 330. Valkyrie. The Valkyrie in Norse mythology, who is in charge of the Valhalla temple and collects the heroes who died in battle. Layton was slightly startled and said immediately, "This is a good name. It makes you feel good when you hear it. A champion should be like this. Name. Stop dreaming, you are still the champion." Chi Hanfan struck coldly, "People like you who have only watched the competition and never participated in it have no real understanding of the strength of the contestants. In my opinion, as long as we can make it to the semifinals, we will be lucky." "Hey, Lao Chi, aren't you trying to embolden other people's ambitions and destroy your own prestige? How can you say that? As a coach, you should encourage the players more. I don't want Valentina to be carried off the field with serious injuries because of her bravery." Chi Hanfan sighed and turned to Valentina, "Since I can't sleep, why not try this one first? Body." "Yeah." Valentina nodded, took off her jacket, and got into the cockpit of the Valkyrie in her underwear. "This is the latest Phoenix Type I skeleton launched by the YIP Consortium. No, this is not Type I yet. Only the model that will be officially released after the competition can be considered Type I. This frame should be called Type 0. Yes." Chi Hanfan's rough palm gently caressed Valkyrie's outer armor, as gently as if he were caressing his lover's skin. "This one is considered an engineering prototype, although there are still many design flaws. It has been solved, but the materials used are much more solid than mass-produced products. Not to mention anything else, the full-circle projection cockpit is much better than the limited-angle monitoring screen of the old-fashioned aircraft." When the aircraft was activated, Valentina felt that her field of vision was completely consistent with that of the aircraft. The mecha was synchronized, and there was no feeling of being enclosed in a small cockpit at all. Pay attention to the limbs. The Phoenix skeleton has 22 more main movable joints than the old antiques like the Raider. Although it is a humanoid mecha, its mobility is not limited to what the human body can do. Action. In addition, the weapon system and the power system no longer use the same energy supply device. You can use the maximum output gear of the energy weapon while moving at high speed. The same is true for the shield. There is no need to worry about conflicts and coordination issues. Chi Hanfan continued to explain to Valentina. Valentina nodded silently, put her bare feet on the pedals, stretched out her hands and grabbed the horizontal joysticks on both sides of the seat. At this time, a tiny current suddenly passed through her body. With a soft beep sound, a holographic heads-up display screen unfolded in front of her, and a mechanical arm protruded from the back of the seat. Put a pair of goggles emitting light fluorescence on Valentina's head. The goggles are ring-shaped, with a bundle of thick cables connected to the back. Valentina tried shaking her head. Although the robotic arm would make corresponding adjustments according to her movements, it would still happen. Put some restrictions on her. What is this? Can it be removed? She asked aloud. The Visual Tracking Assist System, a standard feature of the next-generation machine, can correct and fine-tune your operation specifications based on the focus of your eyes and eyeball movements through AI calculations, making the body's movements more coordinated and also storing a large number of preset actions can minimize the pilot's operational burden, Layton said. Valentina glanced at the fighting dagger hanging on the waist of the machine, and lightly pushed the joystick with her right hand. Her fingers even hovered over the buttons, and the right arm of the machine had already turned, holding the hilt of the dagger. I don't like this. Can it be changed to full manual? Valentina frowned and shook her head slightly. Although this auxiliary system is very convenient, in her eyes, this thing will reduce the reliability of the body. No matter how much AI evolves, it is impossible to fully understand human thinking patterns. For a rookie, this thing is indeed it can play an obvious role, but for masters who often perform unconventional operations, this thing is a superfluous existence. Not only cannot it help, but it will also interfere with the pilot's own judgment. Of course it can be turned off, just press the orange button with the eye on the top of the cockpit, Layton replied. Ha, I've heard people say before that real masters like full manual operation. Now this is an insight. Arrive. The railings on the maintenance stand slowly opened toward both sides, and the one-eyed monitor on Valkyrie's head flashed a red light, and he stood up from the base. Pay attention to the switching between maneuver modes. Don't use the high-power thrusters of the legs indoors. It will cook Layton and me. Chi Hanfan stepped back while instructing Valentina loudly. I'm going to prepare the target drone. Layton only said one sentence, and then hurriedly ran towards the hangar. Valentina was not a new recruit who had just come into contact with mechas, and she didn't need that kind of acceleration forward, backward, left and right. The basic operation tutorial of deceleration, if you want her to get familiar with this machine as quickly as possible, then naturally the only way is to fight. With the ground shaking slightly, a military green-painted aircraft came out of the hangar. This was the Raider 3 that Chi Hanfan had modified before, but with additional foam metal armor specially used as a target was hung. This guy doesn't care at all about waking up the people sleeping upstairs. Chi Hanfan shook his head helplessly and entered a series of instructions on the console nearby. Thick soundproof walls it rose from the ground and enveloped the entire underground workshop. However, even if there is a soundproof wall, it cannot completely isolate the vibration caused by the mechas stepping on the ground. Not long after, those who were awakened came to the underground workshop, but when they saw two bodies confronting each other when I saw the mecha, all the complaints disappeared. These people were retired soldiers, and there was nothing more enjoyable than being able to see two giant steel beasts fighting each other at such a close distance. Just click as far as you can, be gentle, don't collapse the house, Chi Hanfan shouted loudly to the two people sitting in the mecha. Come on, little girl, let me see the performance of the new skeleton. The striker II's right leg took a step back, pressed hard against the ground, and then stretched out his right arm, facing Valkyrie quite provocatively. Waved. Valentina didn't speak, but Chi Hanfan, who was watching the battle from a distance, spoke up. compared to the performance of the new machine, I think this child's manipulation talent will surprise you more. Really? I haven't fought against an ace pilot yet. Don't hold back, show your abilities to your heart's content. Layton's voice was trembling, but it was not because of fear, but because of excitement, the kind of excitement that comes from mecha fanatics. He felt his adrenaline rushing, and every cell in that part of the body seemed to be restless. Although Layton knew that he would definitely lose, he could having such an opportunity to fight with the best pilots riding the best mechas is a feeling that simply cannot be described in words. The engine of the Striker 3 began to roar in a low voice. Before the battle even started, Layton had already pushed the output of the mecha to the point where it was close to the upper limit. He drew out the unedged heavy training sword behind him. He pointed the flattened sword tip at Valkyrie, who was driving 30 meters away. The onlookers remained silent and stared intently at the two mechas. Although they were all infantry and had never flown a mecha, they had heard many stories about ace pilots circulated among the field troops. Any character who can be called an ace has terrifying power that can change the direction of a small-scale battle. But at this time, Chi Hanfan's expression changed and he shouted sternly, "Didn't I say it's time to stop? You pushed the output to the maximum before you even moved. When the fight comes, are you not afraid of the power furnace exploding? That one, the machine body was specially modified by me for Valentina, and there is no safety limit valve at all. For an ordinary pilot, the power furnace exceeding the limit is an extremely dangerous thing. It is no different from dancing on a tightrope. There may be a danger of self-destruction at any time, but for an ace pilot, by lifting the restriction valve, squeezing the performance of the machine body to the maximum is just like a commonplace thing. However, it is precisely for this reason that the ace pilot's exclusive maintenance class can almost be regarded as the group of people in the logistics force who curse the mother most frequently every day. Don't worry, it won't explode. I admit that I'm far worse than the ace, but I won't be underestimated by you. Layton's unconvinced voice came from inside the machine. You, Valentina, calm down this reckless man. Seeing that he couldn't persuade Layton, Chi Hanfan simply put his hope in Valentina. Clear. As soon as he finished speaking, Valkyrie transformed into an orange stream of light. In the blink of an eye, he crossed the distance of more than 30 meters between the two machines. First, he punched and shattered the head monitor of the Striker 3. At the same time, her knees pushed up hard, causing the entire Striker 3 to lose its balance. Then, she pulled out the fighting dagger, inserted it along the armor gap on the waist of the Striker 3, and cut it off accurately. Main power supply cable on one side. The Striker 3 suddenly turned into a hemiplegic disabled person, and during this entire process, Layton had not even completed the action of retracting the heavy sword to block. So fast, Layton, who was sitting in the tilted cockpit, said in astonishment. He pulled the joystick on one side hard, trying to fight back with the side of his body that was still moving, but his fist had just been thrown out. Valkyrie had already grabbed his wrist, and then, the entire forearm of the Striker 3 was torn off abruptly. Stop! Stop! I give up! Don't dismantle it! This drone is still usable, don't rush to send it to the scrapyard. Layton shouted repeatedly. 4.6 seconds, you lasted 4.6 seconds, do you know the difference now? Chi Hanfan walked over, climbed on the fallen Raider 3, and reached out to pull Layton out of the cockpit. It's so fast, and there is almost no error in the operation. If I hadn't modified this mecha myself, I would have thought it was a neural link machine. Layton said with a grin on his face. There were bruises all over his body. He was so excited just now that he sat in the mecha without even wearing a helmet. As for the neural link machine mentioned by Layton, it is a thing that is still in the experimental stage. Just like the literal meaning, it is to control the mecha directly through nerve signals by connecting the human nervous system to the body, just like the literal meaning. Just like the blasphemer mecha that Kaylan rode on. According to the progress announced by the Institute, a small number of prototypes of this special machine may have been equipped for the secret forces on the Ark, but there are still a lot of flaws and limitations. If you want to install it into the entire army, there are still many ways to go. A long way to go. If Kaylan had not thrown the blasphemer mecha into the abyss, perhaps this road could be shortened by a lot in an instant, but in this way, the secret of experimental subject number 1197 would naturally not be concealed. If someone really tried to take advantage of that big lizard, it would probably lead to a catastrophe for humans. Tisk. Layton rubbed his lower back, looked at Valkyrie standing next to the attacker, and couldn't help but sigh. Ace is really strong. He was very aware of the gap between himself and the opponent, which had nothing to do with the performance of the mecha. Before he could even block the opponent's first punch, the opponent had already made a series of quick and precise operations. You must know that she uses a purely manual operating system. If this is converted into the APM value in the video game, Valentina's effective number of operations per minute may have exceeded 300 times. Moreover, among these 300 micro-operations, not one was redundant or unnecessary, nor was there any error or deviation in the operation. What an amazing control ability this is. This little girl is really a genius. Layton held it in for a long time before finally spitting out these few words. Her talent is indeed amazing. Chi Hanfan nodded, let alone an amateur pilot like you who became a monk halfway. Even the veterans in the Strangler Squadron who had more than 1,000 hours of actual driving time were all he was often defeated at her hands, and she was only 16 years old at that time, and her actual driving time had not reached 50 hours. As he spoke, Chi Hanfan suddenly sighed. She had a chance to become a real ace, but it's a pity. Oh, but this is good, at least she doesn't have to go to the battlefield anymore. That's never a good thing. Place. P.S. Thanks to Don't Miss Me All the Time, you are me for the 9,100 starting coins, and thanks to Mike Bao for the 5,000 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 331. The next day. Although the arrival of Valentina and Chi Hanfan have filled the vacancy of the ace pilot of the God Hunting Group, the list of contestants has not been finalized. The competition system of each round of the Arc Mecha competition is determined by drawing lots and is completely random. Although most of them are one-on-one competitions, they also include arena competitions and 3-on-3 team competitions, which require multiple pilots. In the competition mode with multiple mechas, according to the requirements of the event organizer, each participating team must consist of 3 starting players and 1 substitute player. Valentina is undoubtedly the number 1 starting player of the God Hunting Group. As for the other 2 places, the names of Layton and Kaylan are written on them respectively. Although Ian's M5 driver's license was obtained through a special channel, his own operation level is limited to the extent of making the mecha move, but combined with the cheating ability of time and stop, he can develop several sets of secrets with him as the core. Come on tactics. According to Ian's request, Layton prepared a support mecha for him. Within the scope allowed by the competition rules, the armor and firepower of this mecha were directly maxed out. At the price, the maneuverability and melee capabilities, it was completely abandoned. You just need to play this thing as a mecha version of a beach landing battle, Layton said to Kaylan. In a 3-on-3 field match, even on the smallest battlefield, the starting points of the 2 sides are still a certain distance apart. 150 meters, if you can use that ability to achieve perfect accuracy, with the firepower of this mecha, it is enough to blow up the opponent a dozen times before it can touch you. The 3 starting players were quickly determined, but it was difficult for everyone to decide who should be the substitute. If this game is like those esports events in the old era, if a substitute player can sit on the bench from the qualifying stage to the World Finals, playing a round of soy sauce and finally getting a medal, then it will be the same no matter who you choose. Just put together everyone, but the problem is that Ian's body is too specialized, and the flaws are even more obvious than the advantages. Although those secret tactics may achieve unexpected results the first few times they are used, but the more times you use it, the more likely your opponent will come up with a way to crack it. If you are lucky enough to be drawn in single-player matches, it's okay. If you encounter multiple players in a row in the knockout stage, the possibility of overturning will be greatly increased, so the importance of the substitute player is no less important than that of the starter player. Originally, Chi Hanfen was a good choice, but according to the requirements of the rules, the mechanic responsible for the maintenance and repair of the mecha and the contestant cannot be the same person, which directly eliminated the possibility of Chi Hanfen ending up. As for the other people in the hunting group, they don't even have the most basic M1 driver's license. If they want to learn to drive a mecha from scratch, there is simply no time. Tisk, this rule is too unfriendly to us. Hound rubbed his chin and said, how about, Kaylan, you ask that intelligence dealer to help us recruit a pilot. It doesn't have to be that kind of ace pilot, can be almost as good as Leighton. I don't think it's feasible. Kaylan shook his head, let's not talk about issues such as running in. The competition is about to start. If we recruit people at this time, what if we recruit a mole who has been bought by other teams? What should we do? Not only will our tactics be leaked by then, but on the field, if this traitor starts acting out, then we will be trapped in a 2-on-4 situation. What Kaylan said makes sense. Chi Hanfen agreed, this kind of thing has indeed happened before. By the way, Lao Chi-Kaylan seemed to have thought of something, and his eyes suddenly turned to Chi Hanfen, can we participate in the mecha competition without armor? In other words, without mecha, we will end up in the physical body? No need for a mecha. Chi Hanfen was slightly startled, how can that be done? If nothing else, it's impossible to pass just the step of sending the body for inspection, this is the same as our Striker 3 skeleton. It's a violation. The rules of the game. No, 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 Kaylan waved his hands repeatedly, what I mean is, equip the substitute player with a mecha that complies with the rules, and then let him abandon the mecha at the beginning of the actual game and transform into an infantryman. Fighting, is that feasible? In that case. Chi Hanfen hesitated for a moment and nodded in astonishment, theoretically, it should be fine. I remember that during the 10th mecha competition, there was a pilot named Song Hana in the OU club. In a 1-on-2 situation where one's own mecha was seriously damaged, he chose to abandon his armor and self-destruct, directly blowing up one of the opponent's mechas that was too close, and then used the pulse light gun he carried to kill the other one. The mecha was also destroyed in the explosion. Chi Hanfen paused and continued, although Song Hana's behavior was not judged as a violation by the event organizer, after that competition, it is prohibited to install self-explosion devices on mechas was included in the rules. It is simply impossible for you to copy what she did back then. There is no need for a self-destruct device. Even the mecha only needs to function as an admission pass. What I need is the combat power of the pilot himself, Kaylan said immediately. The first person to react was Hound. He patted his thigh hard and said loudly, hey. I understand what you mean. You are planning to let Asano Akira be the substitute player, right? Yes, Kaylan nodded, even without a mecha, Akira Asano's maneuverability alone can outperform an average pilot. Although the nano alloy blade cannot break through the body's armor, it still poses a considerable threat to external monitors, armor gaps, exposed pipelines or fragile joints. Asano Akira alone can contain the opponent's attack. A mecha, Leighton took over the conversation and said, if the other party ignores him and chooses to focus on me and Valentina, then his room for performance will become greater. In addition to the warblade, you can carry equipment such as sticky grenades and individual anti-tank missiles, the only thing you need to pay attention to is your own safety. Although the weapon power of participating mechas is limited, for those without mecha protection, it's fatal. As long as it's not a covering attack, I should be able to handle it, Asano Akira said calmly, but my ability consumes a lot of myself, and I shouldn't be able to use it a second time in a game. It doesn't matter, it can only be used once, which is enough to determine the outcome, K-Lan said. Everyone in any game that Asano Akira participates in must give priority to ensuring his safety, although victory is important. If the situation is really lost, if we lose control, we will give up immediately. Do you understand? Clear. Of course. Valentina and Leighton said at the same time. In addition, with Asano Akira as the core, we can also design several sets of tactics. In this way, Asano Akira and I can replace each other, which can bring about completely opposite changes in our fighting styles, and the opponent will become more aggressive if he wants to target him. It's even more difficult. There is even a third possibility: replace Leighton and Asano Akira and I play at the same time, K-Lan said. P.S. Thank you to book friend 2017042911584750 for the 500 starting coins, and thank you for not having to pay me back all the time. You are the 200 starting coins that I rewarded. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter, author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 332. The last few days before the opening of the competition passed in the blink of an eye. Under the arrangement of the event organizer, K-Lan, and others, and their mechas, together with those clubs that did not have private airships, boarded the emblem of the Family Consortium on a very large transport ship. In a competition between mechas, even if the power of weapons is restricted, it will inevitably cause damage to the competition venue. Therefore, the venue for the mecha competition is not on the Ark, but on a plain 35 kilometers west of the Ark. There is a 40-meter high alloy fence around the perimeter of the arena. A large number of defensive facilities are arranged on the wall to ensure that indigenous creatures in the wilderness will not break into the arena. On the inside of the wall, the entire arena is divided into dozens of areas, large and small. These areas are specially prepared for the lottery competition system of the competition. These venues not only include urban street fighting scenes with numerous buildings, polar ice sheet scenes with temperatures tens of degrees below zero, and underwater areas as deep as 100 meters, they even have, with the help of anti-gravity devices, a weightless arena similar to space is simulated. The venue that made K-Lan feel most luxurious was a perfect replica of a tropical rainforest on Earth from the old era. You know, even Earth plants with low environmental requirements cannot grow on Alpha Planet. Growing on the wasteland, who knows how much manpower and material resources Consortium spent to build such a realistic scene that may never be used. If you have money, you can really do whatever you want. Leighton on the side couldn't help but sigh. The viewing area in the venue is set up under the base of the alloy fence. The general structure is similar to the stadium in the old era. However, due to the distance and occlusion, the spectators can only see the matches in the nearest few venues. As for the competitions in other venues, they can only be watched through the large screen above the viewing area. In K-Ian's view, in addition to being able to feel the atmosphere of the mecha competition, the audience who purchased general admission tickets, the experience of watching the game is not as good as that of an audience like him sitting at home, drinking wine, blowing on the air conditioner, and watching the live broadcast on the internet. K-Lan still remembers this time last year, when he was watching the game at home. While flicking the glue, he watched the mechas of the same model as the model in his hand fighting each other on the screen, and the commentators' hoarse shouts were mixed with metal and metal. There is a fierce collision sound. At this time, it is best to order a few more boxes of fried skewers and put a large bottle of carbonated drinks on ice in advance. What is life? This is called life. Of course, the above remarks are only for those who have been taken advantage of by buying ordinary tickets. The so-called VIP viewing area is actually a dozen floating platforms floating in the air. These floating platforms can not only adjust their positions at will, but can even land in the venue to watch the game up close, as long as it does not affect both participating parties. No one will come out to stop it. On these suspended platforms, the consortium has also installed energy shields with sufficient power to ensure the personal safety of VIPs when watching the battle at close range. In addition, beautiful waiters with beautiful figures, high-end drinks and snacks, and exquisitely crafted souvenirs, these things are naturally standard in every VIP viewing area. According to the practice of every competition, a wonderful opening ceremony performance is definitely indispensable. The family group will also take this opportunity to announce the upcoming Phoenix Type I skeleton. Of course, for people like Kaylan and the others, for connected households, this new skeleton is no longer a secret. Although the models standing next to the mechas were getting hotter and hotter, Kaylan and others were not in the mood to watch these performances at this time for no other reason. The hound responsible for drawing lots was lucky and drew them back. They got a number 1 pick, which means that their first game is the opening game of this competition. The opponent in this opening match was also a coincidence, Angres Mecha Athletic Club. This name already makes it clear that the investor of the club is Angelus Biotechnology Company, a subsidiary of the Morgan Consortium. Not long ago, Kaylan had just offended this Morgan Consortium. This is probably the proverb enemies meet on narrow roads, right? Sophia said with a smile. She was wearing a camel double-breasted windbreaker today, her long pale blonde hair was tied into a ponytail, and was covered by a pair of brown sunglasses. Most of her face looks like the kind of female star that often appears in street photos. Maybe Kaylan stared closely at the holographic screen projected on the floor-to-ceiling window. According to the results of the second round of draws, the format of the opening match was a single arena match. This format is similar to a fighting game called the King of Fighters. They are exactly the same. Each side sends 3 contestants. After sorting, they will engage in a one-on-one battle. The winner will stay and the loser will leave. The winning side is prohibited from substituting players, repairing the machine body, and replenishing ammunition and energy until all 3 contestants on one side have competed. Only by exiting can the winner be determined. As for the competition venue, they chose a dry valley with relatively open terrain and almost no environmental interference factors. Although the Immortal Crew Association has helped them solve the Morgan family matter, the 2 sides are now competitors. Even those guys with great hands and eyes can't interfere in the game process. Kaylan can't guarantee that the other side's pilots will do anything about it. What kind of evil is done by one of our own people? If the opponent's pilot dies during the competition, he will be directly disqualified, but this is limited to death. If the opponent is only seriously injured, even if he is disabled, it is considered within the scope allowed by the rules. After all, swords and guns have no eyesight. In a fierce battle, no matter how good the pilot is, it is impossible to accurately control the attack power. Therefore, in almost every competitive competition, many pilots will be carried off the field on stretchers. Deal it as quickly as possible and don't give the opponent a chance to play tricks. Kaylan walked to Valentina, who was the first to die, and lowered his voice to her. I heard that these people have a grudge against you. Valentina turned her head and asked expressionlessly. It's not really about hatred, it's just a little friction, but I can't trust the character of these people. Kaylan replied that he didn't tell anyone about the assassination. This matter not only involved the Morgan family, but also the undead crew members. It would be related, no matter what the angle. He didn't want other people to get involved in this troublesome matter. I understand. Valentina nodded, turned, and walked towards the hangar. The Angres Club also has an ace-level pilot, but their order of action is exactly the opposite of Ian's. The 2 weaker pilots are in the front, and the ace is in the finale. This arrangement is obviously intended to allow the first 2 cannon fodders to consume Valentina as much as possible, and finally let their ace wait for work to complete the feat of 3 in a row. After all, the information of the contestants is public, and the other side also knows that except for Valentina, who has just joined, the other members of the god hunting group are not as strong as their ordinary pilots. As for the mechas used by the Angres Club, they have the financial support of the Morgan family, and are naturally all new mechas based on the Phoenix prototype skeleton. The competition itself was actually a giant advertisement tailor-made for the skeleton. Kaylan estimated that all participating teams that were at least slightly famous or powerful should have received the skeleton sent by the family group. You really know how to do business. P.S. Let me ask a question. The models at the auto show are called car models, so what should the models at the mecha show be called? Machine model, Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 333. We can see that the contestants from both sides have already entered the venue, and the opening match of this mecha competition is about to begin. A rich and powerful baritone echoed in the arena. For old viewers of this competition, this voice can be said to be very familiar. Alex Aiden. He is not only the host and chief commentator of the competition, but also a retired ace pilot who has played for many wealthy professions such as till and bank. The club has won 3 mecha competition championships and 4 individual MVPs. It has also created an unprecedented record of 37 consecutive victories in individual competitions. Even though he has retired for many years now, he can still be regarded as one of the hottest figures in this circle. Although Alex's eloquence is only average among his peers, with the top ace pilot's understanding of the game and his own super popularity, from the 13th to the 21st, in every voting event for host and chief commentator, he can get more than 10 times the number of votes from the second place. The number 1 position on the hunting god hunting team is Valentina. The land machine Valkyrie 0 adopts the latest Phoenix prototype skeleton launched by the Yip Foundation. It is a machine with high mobility and balanced far and near capabilities. General purpose machine, well, we just received the latest news. This contestant is participating in the competition for the second time, and the reason why she was eliminated last time, was because she accidentally killed the opponent's pilot. Kaylan glanced at the live broadcast data. In just a few seconds, Valentina's approval rate not only did not plummet because of Alex's words, but also increased a lot. This kind of lethargy, what would have been a stain that would most likely lead to a lifetime ban in the peaceful era of the old era, has now become an eye-catching flashpoint. The vast majority of the audience wants to see a more real, cruel, and bloody game, not that kind of game. Point to end sports competition. Let us shift our attention to the other end of the field, the Angres Mecha Competitive Club. Their number 1 position is player Porcupine. Obviously this is a code name, not the player's real name. As for his mecha is the new machine Heracles Fa-type that also uses the Phoenix prototype skeleton. Although the viewing platform is suspended directly above the venue, the picture on the projection screen is still much clearer than watching the game directly with the naked eye. Standing in the distance is an extremely bloated mecha, Hygres. This is originally the name of Hercules in Greek mythology, and Fa-type is the abbreviation of full armor model. The torso and limbs of this mecha are all covered with thick reactive armor. In addition, a large number of external thrusters and missile launch nests are also attached. At a glance, you can tell that it is a machine that is biased towards fire suppression. Heavy body. Although it is a heavy machine body, the maneuverability of this Heracles Fa-type cannot be underestimated. It must be said that Alex is indeed very professional when it comes to mechas, and his vision is extremely vicious. Discovered the special feature of this mecha at a glance. Everyone in the audience, please pay attention to its feet, the large circle of rubber edging. This is not a dust cover, but a high-strength air cushion apron. Although it just walked into the venue step by step, but I can guarantee that it must have the ability to maneuver in parallel sliding. From this point of view, the Dry River Valley is simply a venue tailor-made for it. The game hasn't started yet? How come it's been called? Hound sitting in the audience said with some dissatisfaction. In his eyes, this guy called Porcupine was just a cannon fodder rushing up to deliver points. This is really not a lie. Kaylan shook his head. the terrain of the dry valley is flat. Using an air cushion to move will be much faster than using feet. In this way, the impact of the opponent's heavy equipment can be almost negligible, and there are almost no bunkers in the river valley. The fire suppression type machine can gain a huge advantage. If this weapon were replaced by Leighton, I guess he would have been killed before he could even touch the opponent. Really or not? Is it such an exaggeration? Oh no, I should ask, are you really that good at it? Big guy, the Hound turned his head and asked Leighton, who was sitting in the back row, in a somewhat sinister manner. Although I feel very unhappy, I have to admit that Kaylan, this bastard, is right. Leighton's machine is more melee-oriented, and this map is really not very friendly to him. Just as a few people were talking, the countdown to preparation time had reached 0, and the first game of the opening match officially began. The Porcupine immediately used the air cushion device to slide backwards quickly. At the same time, the missile launch nests on both shoulders were all opened, and hundreds of micro-missiles roared out, trailing gray-white trails from several different the angle hits Valkyrie. This kind of micro-missile is not very powerful. Valkyrie's outer armor alone can carry it directly. However, if it accidentally hits the monitor or vulnerable parts such as joints and heat dissipation vents, it will still cause certain damage to the mecha. Damage, in the terminology of the circle, this attack method is called lottery. Valentina did not choose to stand on the spot and resist. Instead, when those micro-missiles flew closer, she controlled Valkyrie to accelerate suddenly, leaned down, and rushed out tens of meters close to the ground, knocking those missiles away. All left behind. Boom, boom. A series of explosions sounded from behind, and the splashed earth and rock fragments hit Valkyrie's armor. Although this evasive action seemed simple, the timing was extremely demanding. As the host and chief commentator, Alec S.I., of course, will not be stingy with his praise at all. A very beautiful evasive action. A total of 256 micro-missiles were fired. But what makes me curious is that Valentina did not fight back. If I read it correctly, the back of her mecha, the weapon mounted on it should be the Mk-35 Striker railgun produced by Thor Heavy Industries. Although it is a weakened competition-specific version, its effective range is more than 1,000 meters, and it can completely include the entire stadium in the attack. It's within the range, but why doesn't she use it? Valentina accelerated again. Could it be that she ended the game through close combat? Another commentator exclaimed. Valkyrie has a pair of foldable wings on its back, and with multiple high-power thrusters on the fuselage, it has a certain degree of flight capability. At this moment, Valentina controlled the fuselage while avoiding the opponent's missiles were attacking while flying close to the ground. In less than 5 seconds, the distance between her and her opponent had been shortened to 200 meters.